We went from a lack of winter storms through the month of December. Now we've got two of them in play. One in the east this weekend, another one in the west, or at least coming out of the west over the weekend. That'll eventually be a major storm heading for the Great Lakes and Northeast for Tuesday to wash away whatever we get late Saturday and Sunday. We're going to put it all together in what proves to be a rather fascinating next 2 to 3 days or so in one way or another. And that is right now on tonight's Joe and Joe Weather Show podcast on this 4th of January, 2024. And it's a Thursday. And the podcast is brought to you by Tempest by WeatherFlow. Get the revolutionary Tempest weather system, and you can join the fastest growing observing weather network on the planet. The link is floating around the chat board somewhere, as I wasn't able to pin it to the top, but it is on the descriptor to this live stream and video. And if you do make a purchase on the Tempest website, use the coupon code I want a weather station, because if you do, you will get
10 big % off, Joe.
Yes, good evening. This proved to be a very interesting day, didn't it? At least from the standpoint of having ourselves sort of roiled by various model runs.
It's beginning to become more clear that the closer you get to the event,
the less you know.
And I'm like shaking my head, especially with the NAM pumped out.
That was just we're going to show all of this, by the way. Yeah, I mean, that was just, it was so ridiculous. And then I was talking with Alan Casper on and off today, and he's just in a sad state because of the fact that where he lives on the Jersey Shore, he hasn't seen a flake or an ice pellet yet, and of course he did hardly sell anything last year. So when I looked at the GFS snowfall forecast number map for 18Z, and if you look at it, there's snow up and down in New Jersey. There is a hole, literally a hole of nothing right over that part of the Jersey Shore where he lives.
Yep.
And I sent him the graphic, and I noted it with a big arrow, Alan's house inside that big hole. I was actually, it was kind of interesting for me from a forecasting standpoint, because you have your first call map, which you're going to show tonight, and I have my first call map, which I did yesterday. And I really kind of felt pretty good about it until you sent me that message on Messenger about the 12Z run, and I wasn't in the house at the time. I couldn't get a good signal on my phone, so I wasn't able to pull it down. And I'm thinking it either brought rain all the way up to Albany, or it did something just the opposite and showed some big snow amounts. And lo and behold, when I got home and I saw it, but the funny thing is that it actually, when I looked at the upper air with that, it actually went back to the upper air that the model was doing about 6 or 7 days ago, where it had this sort of little wrapped up cutoff low off the coast of Delaware, and a really deep, relatively deep low, a 986 low or something, where you'd get all the cold air trapped, and you get dynamic cooling and a comma head and all the rest of it. And then suddenly it just out of nowhere it reappears again. So I'm sort of shaking my head. And then the NAM comes in and kind of confirms what the 12Z its GFS did. So I didn't change my forecast yet. I know I'm going to have to do some changes in inland spots, but I'm not sure about whether I'm going to do anything different on the coast that I already did.
The one thing that's going to happen over this weekend with this first system is that apparently it's going to go through a cycle of bombogenesis, that all of a sudden during the midday and afternoon on Sunday, from a relatively flat flow in the upper atmosphere at 500 millibars, all of a sudden it suddenly carves out a very distinctive closed low south and east of Cape Cod. And I think the backlash effect of that intensification comes back to the tri-state area in the form of another round of snow. It's a funny thing, Joe, that the initial shot is like from late in the evening hours to overnight on Saturday night, Sunday. And you figure by Sunday morning, with the storm system pulling away to the north and east, that's it. You get 3, 4, 5 inches. But then suddenly, as this thing starts to rev up to our east and north and intensify, it throws back another round of snow. And the ironic thing, the funny thing is, I think on the 18Z NAM, they dump over a 3-hour period. I think from 1 p.m. to 4 p.m. on Sunday, they dump like 7 or 8 inches on New York.
No, that was just, but it was the numbers were insane. I mean, it really was just sort of insane. Look, if you don't, if that's going to happen, you have to have a cutoff low has to form in order for that to happen. If you just
Right.
have an open trough that's going to come eastward, yeah, you might have some backside snow and it'll piddle for a while. Maybe somebody gets an extra coating to an inch or so, and that would be about it. The surface low on that GFS run, 11 millibars, Joe, in 6 hours. I mean, it went from
Right.
high 990s to low 980s in 6 hours time. So if that does happen, then party party time for coastal snow lovers. But I'm just not so sure that I'm not convinced that that is going to be the case. It may happen, but it might happen further out to the east, and maybe southeastern New England catches it. Eastern, the eastern Connecticut, Rhode Island, southeast New England, and Boston. Maybe they get it from the deepening, but we just sort of miss out. I'm not going to base my forecast based on that series of runs today.
It's going to be interesting to watch this on Saturday night and Sunday to see exactly what is going to be the case. Right now, I think a lot of forecasters looking at this are saying the heaviest stuff comes in the overnight hours of Saturday night, Sunday morning, and then on Sunday, yeah, they'll probably be through much of the day. And this is what I basically said. Through much of the day, there are going to be periods of snow shower and flurry activity, but really not mentioning anything in terms of any additional significant accumulation. It'll be very interesting, though, if all of a sudden during the day on Sunday the snow revs up and becomes steady or moderate or even heavy for a while. And but we're still a couple of days, still 48 hours away
Right.
from that of 48 to 60 hours away.
To,
So we'll have to see whether or not the models now in the coming next 1 to 2 days continues to show that backlash effect, that whiplash effect, if you will,
right.
or whether or not it lets go. The European let it go. The European, from what I was able to see, as opposed to, let's say, the GFS and the NAM, the European said, okay, heavy stuff overnight, Saturday night, Sunday morning, and then bye-bye. It
Because
goes
the European has the upper low forming southeast of Cape Cod
right.
instead of forming off the New Jersey coast. That's a huge
Right.
difference. The ATZ GFS is kind of in that idea versus the 12Z. I'm just going to say that tonight's 0Z and the day run tomorrow are going to be really important in trying to sort of finalize how this is all going to play. David Fuller hits the tip jar for the first one of the night. Thank you, David. We'll see if that backlash stuff winds up happening. That'll work out for you on the Jersey Shore, perhaps. We've already, you got to ring the bell, Joe, because we already have 100 likes and on our way up maybe to 200. Thank you for those of you who hit the like button, and welcome to everybody on the chat board and those of you who are
There you go.
we rang that bell. And welcome to those of you who are maybe not on the chat board, but are watching in the background. If you'd like to join the conversation, by all means, please do. Subscribe to my YouTube channel so you don't miss the Joe and Joe Weather Show, which is usually on Sunday through Thursday at 7:35 p.m. Normally we are off on Friday and Saturday, but we are not going to be off this Friday and this Saturday, so we will be on Friday and Saturday, and possibly Sunday. Let's see how Friday and Saturday goes, and then we'll figure out that, because we need a break, and maybe Sunday might be the one chance we get to take it, but we'll see. All right. Why don't we start with your early call snow forecast map?
we'll do that. Do I have the ability to share the
Oh, I'm
screen?
sorry. Yes, let me hit that.
No, I
All right, hang on. Let me hit the button. I'm one person here, young man.
don't.
Go on.
Mrs. Rayo, by the way, is not with us tonight. She's still recovering from spilling an entire container of um, stuffing,
Uh,
turkey stuffing,
okay.
on the floor. On the floor. She did her hand. She was trying to get the. It's like one of those Tupperware boxes or whatever, Tupperware containers, and
Yes.
she was pulling and pulling. She finally got the top off, but it slipped out of her hand and it fell onto the kitchen floor. And then the big thing was trying to keep Sweeney, our dog, from running over and lapping all of the
All the
stuffing off
stuffing. Yeah. All
before
right.
she.
So the Mrs. Rayo is not here tonight. The part of Mrs. Rayo will be played by Marjorie Reynolds. All
Can you
right.
see the? Can you
Oh,
see my?
yes, we see it beautifully. Shows up
Yeah.
lovely on a big screen.
And so here we go. This forecast is valid through Sunday, January 7th, not 7 a.m., but 7 p.m. That's to take into account any lingering or intermittent snow or flurries that continue through the day on Sunday. And, basically, what I saw, Joe, from all of the models really is that they eventually push the 32-degree line up through at least central Westchester, even as far north as up into Putnam County and southern sections of Orange County. It seems to indicate to me that what we're going to see is a coating to a couple of inches of snow. This is a very relatively narrow band right along the immediate Connecticut coastline across southern Westchester, south of Interstate 287, and then interestingly down into New York City. And I mentioned this last night that this is one of those scenarios where the Bronx or Upper Manhattan may pick up a couple or 3 inches, and meanwhile, places further south in Queens, Brooklyn, Staten Island just see either a coating or don't see anything at all. But you see that band here, that's the area where very light amounts would be, and it would probably be a slushy coating to a couple of inches because, with temperatures hovering so close to or even perhaps at times above the freezing mark, you're going to have a very wet snow falling. Also, the other thing is that we may also see some sleet and even plain rain mixing in down here as well. Notice below this hatched or dotted line for all of Long Island, and of course also for Brooklyn, Queens, and Staten Island, hardly anything, if there is anything to be had at all. So down here and down the Jersey Shore, probably you're not going to see much, if anything, in terms of snowy or frozen precipitation. Once you get to the north of 287, and this is going to be the area, I think, the battle zone, where we're going to delineate from, just a coating to a couple of inches to maybe upwards of 3 or 4 inches. There you see I have the 2 to 4 inch band, which encompasses Morristown, New Jersey, central sections of Westchester, and on into southern or south central Connecticut. Now, I wouldn't even rule out, Joe, the way some of the models were playing around with that 32-degree line. I wouldn't even rule out the possibility that in Rockland County, northern Westchester, and even portions of Putnam County, even perhaps southern sections of Orange County, and across portions of north central New Jersey, that some sleet may mix in with the snow. But the further north you go, the more you're going to see of snow and the less you're going to see of any kind of liquid precipitation or frozen precip. 4 to 6 inches, that's what I have for this band up here. And then once you get north of the I-84 corridor, we start talking about amounts in excess of 6 inches, at least according to this forecaster, 6 to 8 inches for much of Orange County, northern and western New Jersey, northernmost Putnam County, Dutchess County, Ulster County, Sullivan County, and right up here in the northern end of Ulster County, where they have the Shawangum and the Catskill Mountain Range, and you have mountains as high as 4,000, 4,500 feet. Up here in the highest terrain area, I could see maybe as much as 8 to 12 inches. If you're looking for a heavy duty snowfall, one place you might want to go, make reservations if you have a chance and if they are able to take you in. The Mohonk Mountain House, just to the west of New Paltz, they are upwards to about 15 or 1,800 feet, and they often see quite a bit more snow as opposed to places that are down in the valleys. So up in that area, you may see, that may be your jackpot of 8 to 12 inches. Further to the north, 6 to 8, Albany back into the probably 4 to 6 category. But anyway, this is what I came up with. This is what I'm calling for our area. I think the snow is going to start. We may see snow begin breaking out across portions of northern New Jersey and the Hudson Valley as soon as noontime or 1 or 2 o'clock on Saturday, although that will be very scattered. I think the main area of solid light snow won't begin to move in until probably after dark, after 6 or 7 o'clock on Saturday evening. And then after that, the heaviest or steadiest snow for the overnight hours, late Saturday night into the pre-dawn hours of Sunday. And then we'll just have to wait and see whether or not any more significant snow comes on the backlash as the storm system itself pulls away to the north and east and begins to intensify as that closed upper system begins to capture it and causes the storm to really rev up. Folks out here, as you mentioned, Joe, maybe in eastern Connecticut, Rhode Island, and points east of there, may find themselves with quite a bit of snow if that indeed scenario does take place.
All right. If we do get that, I'm assuming that you would also consider that you would bring your final accumulation line down further south to cover Long Island and the rest of New York
Oh, of
City.
course,
Yeah.
eastern Long
So
Island.
this really doesn't take this. So that in a sense, the map you drew, because you drew it, I think, before the 12C came out. So assuming that there's no there's no backside, there's no deepening low in the box per se, then you probably won't have much where you have your zero line. But if we do, you're going to have to move that further south, clearly.
Absolutely.
Okay. I mean, I mean, it's certainly fair. And I think it's a reasonable forecast. I've seen a few people on the chat board asking about other places. PP Face wants Northeast. It's asking about Northeast PA, and obviously on Joe's map, he has it sitting at 6 to 10. And I also got a few other messages that folks are watching us from other states in the Northeast, particularly up in Maine, looking for our never to be humble opinions when it comes to that. So I am now going to show my early call, and this I did yesterday. So I did obviously. I
And the
didn't.
interesting thing is, if based upon our history, you are normally the one that provides the larger snow accumulation amounts. This is a rare occasion where I actually came in with more snow than you did.
Right. Now, I will tell you that if I had waited till today to do it, I would have gone higher in inland spots than I did. I was thinking that the possibility that either there might be enough cold air to put us down a slushy inch or two across. I drew a line across Long Island, right across the middle, east-west, or I have a little bit further south than that. But I just sort of mentioned the slushy inch or two, and certainly if there's some sort of low that forms offshore and we get some backlash out of that, then I think that has a good chance of happening. And then I drew a 2-inch line just north of New York City, and then you see my areas of 4 to 6 and 4 to 6. And I tried to be cute about it. I don't know why I made a shadow there. I just didn't link it right across through the Catskills. Now, if I had done it today, the one thing I would have done is I would have probably pulled this 4-inch line that I have in Pennsylvania from Harrisburg to just south of Scranton. I would probably take that northern part of that 4-inch line and pull it and move it across northwest New Jersey, and then maybe move it across, for Putnam County, and then straight across southern Connecticut and southern Rhode Island, and have a general large area of 4 to 6 or 4 to 8 in the inland area. So that's one change that I'm considering doing tomorrow when I do the final call. But the point of the early call for me, when I put it out uh, for my subscribers on my Patreon platform, because I don't make it public on the day I put it out. In fact, I'm not putting it out on Facebook at all for a whole host of reasons. But um, I will put it out here on the show. But I do it early because I don't want to, one way or another, I don't want to really be biased by everything that's going on. Because you start putting out maps and you have to going to start changing them every 6 hours. You can't do that as a forecaster. You just can't do that. You
By the
have
way, somebody on the chat board just pointed out. I don't know if you'd call it a significant error, but there is an error on this map, Joe,
There
and
is.
you cannot attribute this to the fact that you looked at early
Oh, I
data.
said 2023.
Yes.
Okay, I just saw that. All right. Yes, I said. All right. I made this map a year ago. I'm so good at what I do that I made this map a year ago because I just knew that we were going to be in a situation where we would be having our next snowfall on
You should
January
be looking
6th,
for the
7th.
farmer's almanac.
Yeah, exactly. I'm just going to update this map because it should go new snowfall forecast map from the Weather Service on the digital forecast. It probably should update through Sunday evening, and it's not going to. It's only going out to Sun. Oh yeah, it is going out to Sunday evening. So we do have this is an updated Weather Service digital forecast. So I'm going to fall back on this, although I don't disagree with a lot of the numbers with this. There is going to be a northern cutoff of heavy snow, probably somewhere maybe around I-90 or a little bit north of I-90 perhaps, because the amounts do go down as you go up through upstate New York and Vermont and northern New Hampshire and in northern half of Maine. But the numbers are higher, 6 inches plus along coastal Maine. You see a big max area here showing up in and around Boston and just to the west. And again, if there's going to be some kind of deepening low just southeast of Cape Cod, this area in southeastern New England could wind up getting a significant amount of snowfall. Meanwhile, the Weather Service is
And
now.
if, like, just I just don't want to. I don't mean to interrupt, but in your opinion, if we do get an intensifying storm south and east of Montauk or south of Cape Cod, do you think that the intensification would actually serve to pull any significant or major snowfall away from the tri-state area and concentrate it more in southeastern New England, or does, as some of the models were suggesting earlier today, stretch that area of potentially moderate to heavy snow out to the west all the
I,
way
I
back
I think it stretches, Joe, because the structure of that trough is it's negatively tilted northwest southeast, and it's sort of on the bottom of that you suddenly get the upper trough is stretching, and at the bottom of that stretch is where you get the cutoff to form. But you still have energy that's to the northwest of there. So I'm thinking that you're going to see stretched out precip west. Maybe there'll be some heavy snow that'll concentrate itself around wherever that upper low center is. But there should still be some snow on the backside. The Weather Service actually has a coating to an inch now for Long Island and for the southern areas of New York City, but they also have that darker shades just when you go, as you pointed out, you go up into the Bronx, northern Manhattan, the Bronx, and especially in the North Bronx where there's some elevation there. It looks like they're kind of thinking along the same lines, and also northwest New Jersey. Go south of Route 78, New Jersey, and again, unless there's a coastal low, you'll probably get mostly rain here. Now, if there is a coastal low, you're going to have that cold air is going to get dragged down, and that's what the NAM model shows that. The GFS earlier today showed that. So that's something we're going to have to keep an eye on. Further,
do you think we might be looking at something along the lines of a Norland trough system? Where you get
well, it
heavy.
might kind of look like that. I don't know if you would call it the classic Norland trough, but it might look like that. The sort of arm that sort of comes around.
Right, and just in case some of you don't know, this is a kind of a system that, as Joe just mentioned, and arm coming around. I mean, like there was one case back in the late '80s where New York and a strip of extreme western Long Island picked up, an inch or two, and then driving on the Long Island Expressway, all of a sudden you hit a
A foot.
specific
Oh,
exit.
it was a foot plus.
It was
exit
like,
exit 57.
and it's like bang, like
Yeah.
you're all of a sudden you're like in a tremendous winter
I,
wonderland.
I know because I lived at exit 61, and if you went east of exit 65 or 66, it was rain. So that was bizarre. That was one of the most bizarre snowfalls I've ever lived through on Long Island.
The closest weather statement that said we don't really know was written by Tom Grant, who was a longtime forecaster at the National Weather Service, and all this was happening. Places were getting nothing, others were getting rain, and then all of a sudden, this one corridor in central or south east central Long Island was getting hammered by heavy duty snow. And Tom Grant ended his statement by saying, "We're no longer forecasters; we're now just observers."
Correct. And you know what? Sometimes that's the best thing you can do and be. The
Yep.
the southern edge of all of this runs through Trenton, Philadelphia, Baltimore, and Washington, and to just about New York City. So there's your line. You just sort of draw everything north and west of there. We're also seeing some, potentially moderate to heavy amounts in parts of the mountains in the mountains of West Virginia and northwestern Virginia. The amounts do tail off as you get down into western North Carolina, but there might be icing issues down here and that's the reason why we have um, winter storm watches that go pretty far south. I'm making the same mistake I've been making trying to load a map from weather.gov and it takes me to something else. I'm not fast enough. All right, I'm going to bring up the watches and warnings map here just to show you what we have going on. And we've got winter storm watches in southern Vermont and New Hampshire, just about all of Massachusetts except the southeast, most of Rhode Island except the southeast, all of Connecticut except for the sliver south of I-95 down to the shores of Long Island Sound, northwest New Jersey, northeast Pennsylvania, then down into central Pennsylvania, down into the Appalachians, where we have these winter storm watches that extend down as far south as western North Carolina. I suspect that when this gets underway, there'll probably be a slew of winter weather advisories on either side. We might, depending on what models do overnight and tomorrow, maybe it'll warrant the addition of some counties in Pennsylvania and maybe in northern New Jersey inside the winter watch zone. Hard to say on that. Meanwhile, the system coming out of the west, which is going to be doing all this, winter storm warnings are up in northern New Mexico, northwest Texas. Winter weather. Winter.
200, Joe.
Yes, thank you. 200 likes. Let's shoot for 300. We've got winter weather advisories surrounding those. Winter storm warnings up the Sierra Nevadas in California, also in parts of northern California into southern Oregon, even down near the coast in that area. We've got advisories that, yeah, now, I'm not. You check the individual forecast. The criteria for winter storm warnings in the Cascades is pretty high. You can have winter weather advisories for a foot and a half of snow.
Right.
That's just how it is up there.
Right.
Also in northern Idaho, northwestern Washington, kind of snaking down the Wasatch in Utah, western parts of I'm sorry, northeastern parts of Minnesota under winter weather advisories there because there's a short wave that's part of this whole mess that's producing some stuff up in that area. And on the I went to the disc loop today because I kind of like the way this looks. You can see the storms that are out there, particularly the one here in the Atlantic, which is sort of it's sort of helping the cause in a way, as it just sort of sits out here and churns, and it's keeping everything from moving. Let me just see if I can move the no, it doesn't want me to do that because they're trying to move the paint box down so see it better. Come on. There. All right, that's better. All right, so let's take this off. We'll do this again. And here's this. Got this one storm here. There's another one to the west of that, and that's this thing. That's the one that went offshore today off the North Carolina coast and has now moved on out to the east. Here's the complex in the west where some of that energy is going to be moving eastward across the lower Gulf states and then make its turn up the east coast. But it's a very busy satellite loop. And then look out in the Pacific, Joe. There's a lot going on there. It's not a fire hose jet. You've got the subtropical jet that rears its ugly head from time to time, and you can sort of see the cloud stream going from there across Mexico and into the Gulf. And we're going to see it again in a big way after this storm goes by with the system for Tuesday, later Tuesday and Wednesday, because that looks like a big powerhouse. And of course, we've been telling you that that's going to be a big rain and wind event for much of the East Coast, and maybe a thumping of snow on the front end as you go further inland. But we got to get rid of we got to get through the first one, and then we'll start really focusing more attention on the second one.
And then there's a third one at the end of next week.
Yeah, there's another one behind it that's going to probably go to the lakes too, and it sort of needs to do that in order to complete the pattern change process. So we have to just kind of let things play out the way nature seems to be intending in the next couple of weeks. Radars are pretty quiet tonight, except for some leftover precip just exiting Maine. But the eastern half of the U.S. is quiet. We've got rain and snow moving into Texas, into northern Texas, northwest Texas. See that arm of moisture and goes back into southern Colorado and back over to New Mexico. Right now, the west is pretty quiet, but they're loading up for the next round of precip that's going to come in with the next short wave. That's going to be the Tuesday storm. The Saturday situation is now moving through New Mexico and into Texas, and then we're going to watch that move on to the east. So let's go to WPC, shall we?
Surely.
All right, so this is WP. This has just been updated a little while ago. And before I get to this, I just want to say to Leon Probitsky, thank you for hitting Super Chat. Thanks for banging the tip jar, Leon. Most appreciated. This is the probability of at least two. I like to use the 50% line for me is where I look for where I would put my 2-inch line. So by using that logic, that is the darkest blue here is 40%. So they're so tightly, they're so tight. Let's just use the dark blue line. That's where I would draw 2 inches in my forecast. I use that. I think I use that rule also for 4 inches. If it's wherever this is 50%, that's where I'll put my four. So I would put my two there. Obviously, where the brown is, this is a probability for two. I probably would put my zero line somewhere close to that. In that area down to the coast, there certainly could be less than 2 inches. Doesn't rule that out. This is just the probability of at least two. And again, that blue line straddles right along the south shore of Connecticut. Then, of course, now go into where you see the salmon, which is an 80%, and that runs across northern New Jersey. Looks like it touches northern Westchester County here, Joe, and then through Connecticut, probably I-15 might be a good highway to use. North of I-15, you're going to get at least two, and then of course you get into the 90% and into the 100%. Now let's look at the probability for at least four. And here we have, so the 50% for four runs across northern New Jersey. So very close to where the two is, just north of the. You're going to go from 0 to 2 to 4. It's going to be very sharp because of how this is, because of the dynamics we're dealing with and how this is setting up. So very high probabilities of 50% or higher in the bluish areas. In northernmost in northwestern Maryland, on into much of central and northeastern Pennsylvania, northern New Jersey, just north of I-15, you'll get four, and then you go higher up, you get to the 80 and the 90%, and that's up into upstate New York, also southern Vermont, New Hampshire, and into southern Maine. Where we see the probability for at least four. Notice those probabilities drop as you go further to the north. Now the probability for at least eight. And here we go. WPC these maps, they've been increasing in their updates today. So now we have a fairly large area of 50% or higher, northeast PA, northwest New Jersey, uh, maybe from Dutchess County northward, perhaps, or just along or north of Route 84.
Well,
You're looking
that's
or
actually almost that's
south.
just barely to my south.
Yeah.
So
So okay. So you see where we're going with this. You got a large area here of that shade of blue is 60%. Okay, or higher probability for at least 8. So again, if I were to had done waited till today, I probably would have, I'd have that big 4 to 8 inch area would be much more appropriate than what I have. Hey, who knows? The guidance from here on in may go back in the other direction. So let's you don't know what's going to be the right forecast until after it's over with, and then you'll know whether your forecast was the right one or the wrong one. Now we've got action out in the west. We don't want to forget our folks in the west coast, and again, it's mostly in the mountains for the next 3 days in the Sierra Nevadas and the Cascades. This is the probability for at least 8. Uh, and a lot of areas here are 50% or higher and even 80% or higher. If we go to 2, you'll notice that it's a lot. Much of the West is going to get snow out of this, up and down virtually all of the Rockies and all of the mountainous areas in California and on up through the Cascades. And then I love these holes. You got these shadow holes like the one in Washington there. You see it, Joe? The little
yep,
shadow hole there. So
yep.
those are always, and then you've got shadow holes in Montana, Wyoming, and points south into Utah and over into New Mexico. And of course, you've got this probability of 2 then extending into Kansas. So what you're looking at here is the setup of the short wave that's coming into the west, and that's going to be the storm that Monday will be forming in the southern plains, snow to the central plains, and then Monday night, Tuesday, it's going to start its path on its way to the Great Lakes. Paul Roman, thank you for hitting super chat and banging the tip jar here. My childhood sweetheart is driving up from Jacksonville, Florida, Ulster County. She's leaving at 3 a.m. I guess this morning. She left at 3 a.m. or she's leaving 3 a.m. Friday morning. Good.
I think he means Friday morning.
Oh, so Friday morning. Good or bad idea to travel? She's leaving tomorrow. I can't imagine she's going to have a problem. Tomorrow morning at 3 a.m. I'm, I'm thinking she'll be okay. There's not going to be much of anything going on tomorrow, except in the western part of the Gulf states. So I think you're going to be all right. But we'll check the map for you when we get to it. So that's that. Now in the long range, this is Sunday into Monday. So this is old though. This was done at before noontime today. So none of the afternoon guidance is in this forecast. But you see WPC still had 10 to 30% for at least 3 back to the Catskills to northern New Jersey and even over Long Island. And then you see the darker greens in Connecticut and then the blues, which is 50 to 70% and even 70 to 90% along coastal Maine into northeastern Massachusetts for at least 3 for the day, starting from the daytime Sunday. So you got the first period takes you to Sunday morning, 7 a.m. This is afterwards. Then on Monday into Tuesday, we start to get into the next weather system. And here you see where the high probabilities are going to be in Kansas, northern Missouri, southwestern Iowa, southeastern Nebraska, back to the Oklahoma Panhandle, 30 to 50% for at least 3, a little bit further north into Illinois, and a fairly large area of 10 to 30 starts to develop. And this would be probably for Monday night in the Appalachians, where there's going to be some cold air wedging down. So there's and there's going to be perhaps some ice before it goes over to a really mammoth rain. And then Tuesday into Wednesday, you can see what WPC is thinking here with regards to snowfall. Now, they've got actually a 10 to 30% chance, Joe, down to New York City and Philadelphia, points north and west for some front end stuff. Now, it may just wind up being an hour of snow and sleet in the big cities, and then it goes quickly to rain. We'll have to wait and see. But the probabilities for something more significant, northeast Pennsylvania, the Catskills, the middle and upper Hudson Valley, further north up into the Adirondacks, and of course into Vermont, New Hampshire and Maine, and this is for Tuesday. Also, Chicago in a 50 to 70% chance for at least 3. Milwaukee, uh, all of northern Illinois, eastern Wisconsin, western and northern Michigan on the lower peninsula, high probabilities for at least 3 with that second storm system that follows up. So now let's go to the models, Joe.
Yes, let's
Yeah,
go.
let's go to the models because we need to see just exactly what's going on. I'm going to go to the 12Z because this was the one that woke everybody up today. It just did.
It sure caught my attention, I'll tell
Yeah,
you that much.
a shocker that was. All right, so this is right now trough off the East Coast, cutoff low in New Mexico. That's our energy. The blue that you see up on the upper left is the next system that's dropping into the west. But let's focus our attention on that cutoff over North Texas as it moves eastward on Friday and then starts to push further east and opens up. Now, here's where, this is Saturday evening. So you suddenly go from, this sort of lead trough that's cut off, opens up, and you barely can find it. But there's a lagging trough, and that's this thing over here. That's a lagging trough. The first is like a little short wave and this is going to represent that low that's going to come up the coast Saturday night into Sunday morning. But what happens is on this run is that you see how that whole trough just stretches, Joe. It actually goes. This is Sunday morning. You've got this short wave over here, and then you got sort of like this. And the bottom part of this is going to continue to stretch out. That's why I was thinking that you would get something. And then you see that little kink there. This is actually the 18Z. I'm sorry, it switched me back. But let's go back to the 12 because that was the one that was so crazy. And, here it is. Let me just roll it back. But you can sort of see it here. That trough just sort of stretches. And then all of a sudden you got this cutoff low that forms right there, right just south of the south shore of Long Island. And there's a surface low that's right underneath it. And that causes that surface low to deepen. But you see how the trough is all stretched out, which is why I thought that there would probably be some patchy snows regardless because of the structure of this. And then, of course, as it moves eastward, it gets really wrapped up southeast of Cape Cod and moves away. All the time, all while that's going on, you got this really monstrous trough digging down into the western part of the United States. That's going to be the big storm for Tuesday. Now, you go back to the 18Z run, and that feature that we just pointed out is actually there in the same spot Monday evening. But if I go back to the morning on Sunday, Sunday afternoon, it's just starting as opposed to on the prior run where it was already cut off. So it
Right.
gets to the same place. It takes longer to get there, and it gets there when it's further out. So that's the main difference, which is why the 18Z numbers kind of came down. And then look at this. I mean, this trough in the west then digs down like crazy into New Mexico. And you'll notice as we go into Monday night, it's already a neutral tilt. So that means it's going to it's going to lift up. It's going to start lifting up to our west, which is why the low is going to go to the Great Lakes. And you see the whole trough just kind of lift up in a negatively tilted fashion with the upper low traveling over Ohio and then over New York State and then get lifted up into Canada, only to see another deep trough come in right after that goes up into the western lakes.
Right.
So it's after that plays through that we finally get into what looks like a much colder pattern into the eastern part of the United States with all the blocking that's going on up in Greenland. But I mean, truly a strange. Oftentimes, Joe, most 9 times out of 10, you're going to have a deep trough like that in the west. You're not really going to see much going on in the east, but this window seemed to have opened up for this weekend. It's usually you're not usually all the action would be in the west, and we would just be warming up in the east, getting ready for the big rain.
It certainly is going to be a very active next couple of weeks. And I looking at the chat board, I notice that there is utter silence from all of the people who during December said, "This is it. Winter is over. It's another lousy winter. It's another boring winter. We're not going to see many anything else. I haven't seen anybody say that, except now they're all jumping up and down saying, look at that, we may get some snow now. You gotta have hope. And again, all of these people who are ready to throw the towel in, right smack at the beginning of astronomical winter. I mean, how could you possibly do that? It is not going to be that way.
Well,
Not
and,
this year.
and the pattern this year is so much different than last year.
Absolutely.
Last year at this time, we were locking into that endless stream of storms coming into California, and it didn't go away right through March and into early April. This time it's different. We have a much more variable type pattern, much more volatile, and that's what you want. You want to see. I mean, if you want winter weather, you want to see volatility, because that's the way you get these kinds of storms to form, and that's what we have in the atmosphere now. It's a very volatile atmosphere, and it's forecast it's going to stay that way probably for the rest of the month. So it doesn't necessarily mean anything else is going to happen of consequence, or maybe it will happen. Something else might happen of consequence. We'll just have to see how it plays out. So here's what it looks like on the surface. Again, this is let me see which one I'm looking at now. This is the 18Z. So let's go to the 12. And in fact, why don't I go close up? That makes it a little more, you'll be able to see it better. So Paul Roman, you were saying she's leaving at 3 a.m. in the morning. I mean, this is at 7 p.m. tomorrow night. And you notice it's just absolutely quiet up and down the eastern seaboard. So she'll be well on her way. There's your low. It's in southeast Georgia, off the coast of North Carolina. Then it kind of straddles the coast. You start to see snow pushing into what cold air we have. You just deal with you got to play the cards you're dealt, and there's not a whole lot of cold air. It's not high quality, but it is what it is, to use an overused cliche. And there's your surface low sitting off the Delaware coast. This is at 1 a.m. Sunday, where it's raining on Long Island on this. It's snowing in northern New Jersey and snowing inland. And it's that light bluish type snow. And then you start to see on Sunday morning, as the low pivots in an east-west fashion, and that's telling you that the upper low is starting to get involved. This is all of a sudden between 7 a.m. and 1 p.m., where the pressure goes from a 995, I think that is, or a 99, I can't see. No, I got the light here, 996, and then it's a 985. So it drops 11 millibars in 6 hours, and suddenly, because of the upper low getting involved, you get all this dynamic cooling, all this vertical motion, and then all that dark blue wraps around the backside. That's all heavy snow. So you got to you got to hope that if this is what you want, if this is what you're looking for, you got to hope that the dynamics set up in just the right way. And this is just the right way. On this run it was. And then it just moves along to the east. And now here comes the next one. Here's your low in the southern plains. Into Arkansas, you see the area of snow in the central plains, and even on the backside in southern Missouri and northern Arkansas. The low goes into southern Indiana, northeast Ohio, and then on this run it was up the St. Lawrence River Valley, and then into southeastern Maine. You got that screaming wind with the really tight gradient. Look at that heavy rain. Severe weather across the Gulf states on Monday evening and Monday night. In the southeast on Tuesday. And then all of this lifts up, and then we blow away ahead of it, and it turns windy and colder behind it. This is going to be a rough storm to get through, Joe.
It is. It is. And on his latest tweet, Dr. Cohen writes, 3 atmospheric celebrities from the 80s are now in the, quote, "where are they now" crowd. Alberta Clippers, semi-permanent winter Hudson Bay polar low, and cold air damming, or CAD, to his friends. Did Simon Bar Sinister have his assistant named CAD? CAD Lackey. Anyway, could CAD make a rare appearance this weekend to make all in the I-95 corridor snow weenies happy? Well, I don't know.
Well, we'll see.
We'll see.
And by the way, after this goes by, there's another one. At least there was on the 18Z run. There's another big storm in the west that goes to the western lakes and brings another round of wind and rain in the east, and that would be next weekend. And then after that goes by, it actually does get significantly colder. A little Arctic front goes through sometime around the 16th, and then it's just cold, and you see these little clipper systems. But again, this is going to change multiple times. And the thing that I'm just looking at this is that in overall that um, the model seems to be keying in on the idea that after January, it's the last 4 or 5 days, it's been and actually making some progress where it's showing cold air coming in after January 15th. I mean, real, Arctic, real cold Arctic air.
Well, it's what it's like, Joe. Well, what we're talking about with not one, not two, but even three storm systems. It's kind of like a pitching machine,
Yeah.
throwing one storm after another across the United States, and each one brings down a colder air mass behind it. And
Yeah.
you're right. By the time we get to storm number 3 after that one, I mean, like the middle and latter part of January looks pretty darn cold across much of the nation.
I agree. That's the last one. You got these lake storms. These storms cutting to the lakes have to happen in order to get the whole process completed. As I say, I've said many times, pattern change is a painful, grinding process that takes 2 or 3 weeks to get through, and much of the time you just sort of throw your hands up because you're feeling very, very frustrated if you're looking for winter weather to happen or to get into a favorable winter pattern. It just takes time. Let's do. Somebody wants the Ann Sambles. All right, it's flood weather. He wants the Ann Shambles, just as we say. So I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do that on pivotal weather. We'll get that. Um, Actually, I have up on the screen now. So this, I thought when I looked at this, Joe, that this was not a bad, uh, maybe not specifically in terms of the numbers, but in terms of how the snow area is set up and how they increase as you go north. This was the 12Z ensemble run. And by the way, the European and the GFS ensembles all through this have been much colder than the operational, which is kind of interesting, given the fact that today the GFS did what it did. But the ensembles have been a little bit colder than the operational, and that may wind up being important. We'll see.
And David Schwartz, I actually have two people who hit the tip jar. We have Mark G. And Mark G commenting about this is a great pattern, lots of action, and all types, not boring. This is your overtime tip, Joe and Joe. David Schwartz asking us, after I guess we look at the ensembles, can you show us the soundings? And a new one on the list, Joe, at least for me, not on my watch, hitting the tip jar. And he says, well, people may get upset. Does your guys chit chat before the show? I appreciate everything you guys do, as I believe this is the realest weather show anyone will ever know. God bless you both.
Oh, thank you. Also, Joe, we have Barry Goldberg, who said, thank you for hitting Super Chat, Barry. This is for your connection, quote unquote, to finally to make it snow. Whatever connection I have, I don't know, but whatever works, Barry. And Helen Bertona just hit the tip jar. Thank you so much for hitting Super Chat. Thank you, everybody, for hitting Super Chat tonight. Definitely most appreciated. Joe, would you ring the bell because we just hit 300 likes?
Yes, I will be very happy to. There was some times during that boring pattern that we were in November and December where we didn't have any more than, let's say, 100 or 150 viewers. And now here we are tonight with over 500 people watching at this very moment and
Yes.
300 likes.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. And hopefully some of you have hit the subscribe button so that you'll come back. This is the 18Z ensembles from the GFS. I'm sorry, from the European. Because they're coming out. They just came out. Let me see. Let me make sure. Yeah, 18Z. So, I mean, if you want to believe it, Joe, it gives just under 4 in Islip, 6 for New York City, just under 8 in Yonkers, 8 in Middletown, 8 in Poughkeepsie, 3.5 in Trenton, 3.5 in Philadelphia, 2 in Wilmington, and mostly 6 to 8 in the inland areas. I think the fight's going to probably at the end of the day be along the coast in terms of, is it going to be just the way you drew it, or is it going to be the way I drew it? I think that's, or something in between. But as far as the specific, I kind of feel comfortable with the numbers that the models are throwing up in there in inland spots with a 4 to 8 type of thing.
It, I'm saying to myself, will I need to make a new map for tomorrow, or can I hold with what I already have? It'll be interesting to see what comes in overnight tonight, and of course during the day tomorrow.
All right, I'm going to widen this out so we can take a look at EPS, so we could look at the upper air going forward on the European. And I'm also going to switch back to the 12Z run so we can go out 16 days, which would be a better thing to do. So let me just set it up here. 500 millibar height anomaly. That's the one. Okay. We'll give it a chance to load. And this is starting today. So I'll move it forward. You see on the ensembles, the stretching trough in the east. It also, the ensembles make a cutoff, interestingly enough, just southeast of Cape Cod. It starts to get going when it nears the coast, but most of the development is offshore. And then that goes out. Here comes our second deep trough, and that lifts up the way it lifts up and into up the west side, up the Appalachians and northeast. Here comes the next trough after that. And as we go through time, you see after that third and final Great Lakes cutter, you have a pretty significant change here. That's a fairly impressive northwest flow with a vortex sitting over Hudson Bay and James Bay, and a flow that comes from northwest Canada all the way into the eastern part of the United States in the longer range, at least on the European. We are now out 16 days. So after that, again, after next weekend, that'll be the last one of these lake cutters, and then we'll be in a we may
And then
go
what basically,
we
and then
may
what basically is going to happen, ladies and gentlemen, is after the middle and latter part of January, we're going to go inside of, those of you who are Rocky fans, remember when Rocky used to like to pound raw meat? He'd go into that ice box, and we're going to be in that ice box. I don't know if we're going to be pounding raw meat, but we're going to be cold probably for the middle and latter part of this month.
And I got the GFS ensemble, so we'll see just real quick what this does. So this is Sunday. There's your stretching trough. Look at on the ensembles at 18Z, Joe. This matches up with the 12Z. Look at where the cutoff low is, just south of Long Island, right in that purple area there. You see it?
Yeah.
So I mean that's the GFS ensembles versus the operational at 18Z. So that's something to make note of. Maybe it's going to be a telling sign for what the overnight models do. I don't know. Here comes the next one, the Tuesday system. This upper low is suddenly coming a little further east. I'm noticing, even though it's the low may wind up going up the west side of the Appalachians before it all said and done, as opposed to going up straight into the central Great Lakes like it had a couple of days ago. That's an interesting development. And then here's your third trough. Now we are at the 14th, going on the 15th. You can see gradually you get that last system to go. The GFS kind of takes it in a different way, but you still get to something that the European has, where you got look it up in Canada. That's a big block. This is on the ensembles. I'm going to see if I can get a North America. Sometimes if I'm lucky, I could get the North America view. I got to do an end around though. Okay, good. I can get it. That's great. Let's look up this way we could see hemispherically what's going on, because that's pretty. When the ensembles to be like that toward the end of the forecast period. Hold on, just a second. My mistake, folks. I'm sorry. That was actually the GFS operational at 18Z. My fault. I've been spinning so many maps that I didn't do it
It can
fast
get
enough.
confusing. It can
It,
get confusing.
yeah, but even now I do have the ensembles, and you can see the purple area off the New Jersey coast. It's a stretched out upper low, but it's there. So the ensembles have it. That goes out. Here comes the Tuesday system. Then that goes out. Here comes the next one. The GFS handles the West a bit differently, and then gradually got the block up in Greenland, kind of forcing everything. Yeah, I mean this is still a cold pattern. I think the European's colder, but this is definitely colder. It's similar to the Europeans ensemble set that we just looked at. So I'm pretty well convinced that that's where we're going to go.
I'm just doing a little bit of moving here in the office, so don't mind me for the moment.
All right, Rich B and Brandon Doherty, Jason Schaefer and Bogies Bees. Uh, Recent hits to the tip jar. Thank you, Bogies Bees. Thank you, Jason Schaefer. And I appreciate what you say, Jason. Thank you. If you ever need me, you just reach out. Brandon Doherty, thank you for the kind words, and Rich B, thank you all for hitting the super
I got to
chat
point out,
tip
Brandon
jar.
hit the tip jar twice tonight.
Yes, he did, and yes, he did hit it twice. Thank you. Uh, oh, you know what we can do tonight, Joe?
What could we do, Joe? What
Oh,
else have we what have we not done already?
oh God, what have we not done? I'm going to bring it up right now. I will put it on the screen. I'm surprised that you didn't think of this. The plumes!
Oh, the plumes?
Yes, the plumes. The
The
new
plumes.
plumes should be out. So let's see what the new plumes have to say. For those of you who don't know what Le Plume de la Brioski, the plumes are what we call the SREF, and it's a kind of a weird looking chart. If I could ever bring it up on the screen, there you go. But it comes out every 6 hours. It's from the University of Stony Brook on Long Island, and there's all sorts of different parameters. There's like 30 different members of Le Plume. So we're going to see if the 21Z is out, and it might be. And we'll go to total snow. Now, White Plains, Joe, on the old one, I think it gave him like 4.5, and on the or just around 4.5. This one gives 3.71. So it's a
Wait a
little.
minute. I'm looking at White Plains myself right now, and I'm looking at the 21Z run,
Right.
and it says for total snow. Let me make sure I'm hitting the right button. Total snow
Oh, 4.39.
4.39.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I had another button there. So it's
What's
very.
interesting? What's interesting is that if you go to the 3 hourly snow, there's like a double peak. Well, actually, the main peak is at 6Z or 1 a.m. Sunday morning,
All right, 3 hourly snow. There you
and
go.
then instead of going straight down or whatever, it's kind of like gradually going on down, and it actually goes slightly back up again.
During the day Sunday. Yeah, it kind of edges down there. You see there's a little blip there after 1 o'clock in the afternoon.
Right,
It blips up, and it's
right.
still snowing. I mean, the NAM actually had snow almost into Sunday evening, if you want to believe it. I mean, and that's the mean. So the black line is the average of all those other lines going in all sorts of different directions. And on the side here, on the right, all those boxes that are checked. I mean, those are the different models, the different variations of whatever these models are: ARWC, ARN4, ARP2. I have no idea what those are, but it makes up the plumes, the SREF. Frank Karajit, thank you for hitting super chat. Thank you very much. Most appreciated. Very generous of you. And Brad DeBauer hitting from Canada. Thank you. Thank you for hitting the tip jar. And welcome, because I think you're new to the Joe and Joe Weather Show, and we love having new people join the crowd. It's wonderful. So that was White Plains. So it's about the same. let's go to. I'm going to go to total snow again, and for those of you who want to play around with this, I'm going to stick I'll put the link up on the chat board so you can play with this at home.
You could actually take away. I mean, you've got like as I said, 30 different members, but
Right.
you could take members away and see how the mean or the dark line changes with
Right. So
respect.
for example, well, the tough part is figuring it out. Like for example, if you're really convinced that White Plains is going to get some accumulating snow, if you could figure out which models these are, and you have to kind of move your cursor over the little dots, and then you can uncheck these boxes, and it will take away and change the average. So if you think that the 0 is ridiculous, you would take all the 0 ones out, or the like anything less than a half an inch or something. And then on the other hand, you'll notice that these top models, there's three models that give one gives 11.6, another one gives 14 inches, and another one gives I can't get that top one to come. The top one is 14, and the one underneath it also says 14 when I move my cursor on it. No, 1455 is the top one, and the bottom one is 1399. So you got some, whatever those members are doing, they go insane and they give big snows. So let's go to the bottom. Here is the map that you can move around, and the blue dots will give you different locations. So I just put up Islip, and Islip gets, got 2.5 on the first one. It gets 2.92 on this one. New York City, it gave a little over 3 before. Now it's giving just a shade under 4. So that's interesting. Poughkeepsie 6.65. Hartford, uh, 6 point, also 6.65. New London, Connecticut, 3.94. Let's check out Boston, shall we?
Surely,
Um, that's not Boston. I just put up. Not sure what station that is. I can't see it. Um, 6.39. Now I'll give you Boston. Boston gets 6.64. I'm guessing that's Logan, but I'm not sure. Just to the northeast of Boston, you get 6.91. Um, the zoom in, sometimes you get all these extra dots, like north of Hartford there gets, I got to bring the screen up, 8.03. And one of the things that I use the plumes for is not necessarily the number it prints. I'm more interested in the trend. So if the prior runs are lower and you're suddenly going up, that tells you something. And of course, the other way around, you can get clues about what the models may do um, on the other side of that. In other words, if you have high numbers earlier, then they start to go down. So the fact that they're going up, I guess you should be, if you're a snow lover, you should be encouraged. Philadelphia gets 1.23. Station southwest of Toms River, 0.44. Station between Toms River and Long Branch, might be Belmar, might not be, 0.65. And in Pennsylvania, we've got Lancaster. Lancaster gets, got to get the screen a little higher. Lancaster gets 2.53. Let's look around Harrisburg. Just west of Harrisburg.
um,
What do we got? Harrisburg gets 3.43. So those are what the plumes are telling us. The trend is, it was even, or in some cases a little bit higher than the prior run. So uh, that gives you maybe an indication of where tonight's runs may going. Maybe a small indication. I don't know. Sometimes it doesn't matter, but the trend is, to me, is probably the more important thing. So we'll see what. And as you get closer, your numbers get a little bit more realistic, as opposed to being still 72 hours away from, getting into some steady snow. Ugh.
well, I think we've just about covered everything for tonight, Joe.
I think we did. Shall we run through Briller Jeopardy real quick, or you want to save it for another night?
I think right the way things have been going here with all of the stuff that we've been talking about, we may have to put Briller Jeopardy on hiatus
Yeah,
for
it
a few
might
days.
it might be a good idea actually. My I'm getting a little my throat's getting a little dry and a little scratchy, so um, maybe we better save it because we are going to be on tomorrow night and we are going to be on Saturday night. So mark it down. A rare Friday. Can you real quick, Joe? Just real quick, because I think this might be important. Can you do a little F Gen?
Sure, I can do that.
Do a little F Gen, and then we'll wrap the show up right after that.
All right. So, which one do you want to start off with? The GFS?
Uh, yeah, do the GFS 12Z F Gen with that upper low the way it is. That ought to be an interesting thing to look at.
Okay, hang on for a second. Share my screen here. And for those of you who are wondering what FGen is, FGen is um, area of atmospheric energy, omega, or
Chronogenesis.
things vertical motion, or whatever, the forcing of weather systems. Come on now, why aren't you moving? Hang on, Joe.
Yeah,
I
just
don't
you
know.
got to play with your keyboard.
I'm seeing.
There you go.
Here we are. Now we're moving.
Excuse me.
So let me move to the FGen 700 millibars. And when you see these purple contours, and if they're especially prevalent and squeezed together, that shows you areas where you might get some rather heavy duty precipitation. This right now is the FGen map for 7 o'clock on Saturday evening. You can see a lot of the stuff is still well south of New York City, just entering southern New Jersey. And notice how everything is really coming together here as the storm begins to organize. Notice again, mostly south, just to the south of Long Island, just reaching into Long Island. And then there's like a finger stretching up into northeastern Pennsylvania, but the lion's share is still out over the ocean. This is at 1 a.m. on Sunday. And at 7 a.m. on Sunday, a lot of the activity is now well off to the east of the tri-state area. There's one area that's sitting over the lower Hudson Valley and southwestern Connecticut, but the lion's share again of atmospheric energy is out well to the east of our area, touching Cape Cod. Then let's see what happens at 1 o'clock Sunday afternoon. Well, look at that. Look at that, Joe. It curves, and it's curving across Rhode Island, eastern Connecticut, and extreme eastern sections of Long Island. So maybe, just maybe, if there is going to be a closed cutoff system developing out here, maybe, just maybe, places like eastern Connecticut, Long Island, Rhode Island may get a sudden surge of snowfall or precipitation on Sunday afternoon. This is a 1 o'clock Sunday. Whoops, sorry about that. I hit the wrong button. Oh, hang on. We're back. Yeah, so around 7 p.m. on Sunday, it looks like a lot of that activity is now pretty well gone, according to the VFS. So the thing to watch is going to be, will indeed that energy curve back, and how far back to the west does it curve? On the 18Z, it has it curving back over eastern Long Island, eastern Connecticut, Rhode Island, southeastern sections of Massachusetts. So maybe, just maybe, there might be a surge or a second surge of snow or precipitation later in the day on Sunday based upon this. Let's take a look at the FGen on the NAM. And oh my goodness, they've already started the 0Z run, Joe.
Yes.
We've been on for quite some time already.
Yeah.
18Z. This is the 18Z run of the NAM. And if we check here, let us go to. We'll go to. This is 1 o'clock in the afternoon on Saturday. You can see some activity, some FGen here in the immediate tri-state area. That lifts out to the north and east. Look at this area down here over Delaware, or well over the Delmarva Peninsula. And there's another area that's over New York. The NAM tends to be noisier than the other global models, the GFS and the European. And you can see all of this FGen down here. This is at 10 o'clock on Saturday evening. And this is at 1 a.m. on Sunday. There's a little area right here over the immediate New York City area. And now, while the lion's share is out over the ocean, there's another band that is now over Connecticut, part of the Hudson Valley, a portion of Long Island. That lifts out to the north and east. Then there's another area, not quite as intense, again, over eastern Long Island. And oh, look at this, Joe. This is a new area of energy that makes it as far to the west as western Long Island and parts of the lower Hudson Valley, New York City, and other areas of Connecticut and southern New England. That slowly lifts out to the north and east. So the NAM is trying to show some kind of backlash effect that gets all the way far back as New York City during the day on Sunday. One last FGen look will be the European. We'll have to go to the 12Z because the European, well, actually, let's see, the 18Z.
18Z should work it. You should be able to get the 18Z.
Yeah. All right. So we'll go 48 hours on the. So here's the European. This is 1 o'clock Saturday afternoon. This is 4 o'clock Saturday afternoon. 7 o'clock Saturday evening. You can see that there's a bit of FGen that's being indicated over the immediate tri-state area and in part of the Hudson Valley, although, again, most of it seems to be, well, the most concentrated area seems to be out over the ocean south and east of Long Island. And you could see by 1 a.m., now the FGen is really revving up over Connecticut and southern New England. And now it's pulling away. This is at 4 o'clock in the morning on Sunday, 7 a.m. on Sunday. So, yeah. So the European is unlike the GFS and the NAM in the sense that, you know, it's showing some intensification, but it's also showing that with the passage of time, it continues away to the north and east. As you can see here, 4 a.m. on Sunday, 7 a.m. Sunday, and pretty well takes all of that, intense activity away from the tri-state area after daybreak on Sunday morning. So we'll see who's in the right here, whether or not it's the global model, the European model, or the global model, the GFS, or even the North American model, the NAM. The next couple of days and the next few runs, Joe, should be very interesting and very thought-provoking.
Yes, Joe, I'm sorry. Just one more thing. In 3 sentences or less, Mac and Cheese 715 wants to know, what does the 540 line mean?
Well, the 540 line is the thermal ribbon that we usually use to indicate where the rain-snow line is. And that usually works, although there are some cases when you have intensely cold air that sometimes the snow-rain line is more in line with the 546 as opposed to the 540 thermal ribbon. If you want to do a quickie analysis and try to determine where the rain-snow line is simply by looking at the 540, but you really can't do that because a lot of times 540 is at 18,000 feet, and sometimes you have a colder layer of air below 18,000 feet, or sometimes a warmer layer of air at 18,000 feet and above. But generally speaking, we use the 540 line to make the determination, the differentiation between the rain and the snow line.
Right.
And
the colder the number, so in other words, if it's 5, you go to 5 because it's every 60, so you go 5 every 6. Well, it's 6, but it's actually 5,400, so it's every 60. So it's 534, 520, 528, 522. The lower the number, the colder the air mass. 546, 552, 558, 564. The higher the number, the warmer the air mass. In general. Okay.
And you really know that you have a very cold air mass and I've only seen this a couple of times for New York, but there have been occasions where we've seen, as low as 480 across the New York area, or at least in the Northeast.
Like every 20 years or every 20 or 30 years or so.
Yeah. And sometimes when that happens, you actually can see as this bubble of extreme cold moves in, over, and then away, you can actually see how the temperatures, sometimes this happens during the overnight hours, how the coldest air is over you, let's say in the midday hours. And then as that cold bubble of air moves away to the north and east, the temperatures actually begin to rise as you get into the overnight hours. But
Right.
again, that doesn't happen too often. And James Davison asking, can we make 400 likes? Maybe if we decided to stick around for another 10 minutes or so, but
No, but we're
I'm
not.
we're not.
Not.
It's
I want to watch the NAM, but I don't want to do it live. So we'll save our energy for tomorrow. So we'll see everybody tomorrow night at 7:35 p.m. Thanks for being here tonight. Thanks to everybody who hit super chat.
David
And
Fuller, Jason Kaplan, Liam Probitsky, Brandon Doherty twice hitting the tip jar, Paul Roman, Barry Goldberg, Mark G, David Schwartz, not on my watch, Helen Bertona, Bogies Bees, Jason Schaefer, Rich B, Frank Karajat, and Brad DeBoer. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you.
thank you. And that's it. Be well. Stay safe. We'll see you.